The alien hunters prepared for what they considered to be a routine expedition, one of many they conducted across countless worlds. Earth, with its untamed wilderness, was merely another stop, another hunting ground. The leader of the group, Karak, stood at the entrance of the ship. His species was built for conquest, his kind bred as apex hunters on his homeworld. His skin shimmered faintly in the cold, a reflective armor that changed hues with the surroundings. The others behind him, 6 in total, shared similar physical traits, muscular, with eyes that saw beyond the visible spectrum. Their weapons gleamed with an alien technology designed to subdue the most formidable creatures in the galaxy. "We have arrived at the coordinates," Karak said in their guttural tongue. His eyes scanned the horizon, where mountains rose like jagged teeth against the sky. "The game here is large and primitive. We will take trophies swiftly." A faint crackle in the air made Karak glance at his wrist console. A warning flashed briefly before the system recalibrated. He frowned, dismissing it as a minor issue. These hunts were always straightforward. The environment was nothing compared to the volatile moons of Arrive or the gravity wells of Dactyr, where they had previously triumphed. The hunters moved out, their boots sinking into the snow with a crunch. The cold was sharp, even by the standards of their resilient species, but they wore advanced exosuits that regulated body heat. Their sensors quickly detected life forms in the vicinity, large quadrupeds with massive frames. Karak gave a low growl of satisfaction as the data displayed a nearby moose, towering and muscular, with a rack of antlers that spanned over 6 feet. Primitive, but perfect for their collection. As they moved through the forest, the towering pines loomed overhead, their needles heavy with snow. Karak activated his rifle, its blue plasma charge humming with deadly potential. The moose came into view, standing near the edge of a frozen river, its breath steaming in the frigid air. It was massive, over 1,500 pounds of raw muscle and bone. Without hesitation, Karak raised his weapon and fired. The beam sliced through the air, striking the moose cleanly in the side. The creature bellowed once before collapsing into the snow, its legs twitching as life drained from its body. The aliens moved toward their prize, satisfied by how easy the kill had been. Yet, as they reached the fallen animal, one of the hunters, Rakov, knelt beside it and examined his wrist console. "Commander, there is interference in the system. The cold is disrupting our thermal readings." Karak scowled. "It is just the weather. Proceed. We do not need advanced sensors for such simple prey." Still, unease settled over the group. The air was colder than expected, and the snow was falling harder now, obscuring the distant mountains. They continued deeper into the wilderness, seeking larger and more dangerous targets. The thrill of the hunt burned bright within them, but each step into the icy forest seemed to sap their energy. Their exosuits, designed to endure extremes, were beginning to falter. A sudden, violent gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a low, menacing howl. Karak halted, his sharp gaze scanning the horizon. The trees swayed, but otherwise there was no sign of movement. Rakov's console flickered again, this time more radically. "Commander, the storm is intensifying. We should reconsider our path." Karak ignored him, pressing on. The ground beneath their feet shifted subtly, as if something stirred beneath the snow. Still they advanced, determined to find bigger game. Another life form pinged on their radar. This one even larger than the moose. They moved quickly, weapons ready. But as they reached the target zone, they found nothing but more snow, undisturbed and empty. Confusion spread through the group. The readings had been clear. Something had been there. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, and now even Karak couldn't ignore the strange malfunctions in their equipment. "Commander," Rakov began, but his words were cut short by a distant, guttural growl. It wasn't the wind. The hunters tensed, their weapons raised. The growl came again, closer this time, and accompanied by the unmistakable sound of something large moving through the snow. Karak's eyes narrowed as he scanned the tree-line, searching for the source. And then he saw them, yellow eyes gleaming from the shadows. Wolves, but not like the ones he had seen in the data. These creatures were larger, more feral, and they were watching, waiting. The hunters had come to take trophies, but it was clear now that something in these frozen woods had other plans. The snowstorm came in full force, a white wall that swallowed the alien hunters and drowned the world in silence. Karak and his team trudged forward, their once confident strides now hindered by knee-deep snow and the relentless howl of the wind. Their exosuits struggled to maintain warmth, condensation forming on their face shields. More than once, Karak glanced at his wrist console only to see the screen flicker and glitch. Every step further into the wilderness made the technology less reliable, as if the very cold was an adversary, eroding their tools of dominance. Rakov lagged behind, muttering curses in their native tongue as he slapped at his malfunctioning equipment. "Commander, I'm telling you, these readings make no sense. We're blind in this storm." "Then use your eyes," Karak snapped. His frustration was palpable, his pride a sharp edge in the storm. "We rely too much on these machines. They're worthless here. Remember your training." But even Karak knew the truth. Without their technology, they were vulnerable. This wasn't their world, and despite his bravado, the Arctic was turning against them. The deep cold seeped through their exosuits, numbing their limbs. Their navigation system sputtered, leaving them directionless in the vast, frozen wasteland. Suddenly, there was a rustling to their left, barely audible above the wind. Instinctively, Karak raised his plasma rifle, scanning the dim shapes of the trees for any sign of movement. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the thrill of the hunt. They were still predators. No matter the environment, whatever lurked in the storm could be taken down with a precise shot. But what emerged was not a wolf, nor a bear, but a massive moose. Its towering antlers were caked with ice, and its breath came in heavy, foggy bursts. The animal pawed at the snow, its black eyes reflecting an eerie calm as it stared down the hunters. The aliens readied their weapons, but just as Karak aimed, the moose charged. It moved faster than they expected, its hooves striking hard against the snow-packed ground. Karak fired, but the plasma bolt only grazed the creature. With a deafening roar, the moose slammed into one of the hunter's rith, tossing him aside like a rag doll. The alien hit a nearby tree with a sickening crack, his weapon clattering into the snow as he lay still. "Fall back!" Karak barked. The remaining hunters scrambled, firing into the beast, but their shots went wide in the chaos. It took 2 more plasma bursts before the moose finally staggered, collapsing into the snow with a pained groan. Karak rushed to Ritha's side, but it was too late. The hunter's body was limp, his chest crushed beneath his exosuit's fractured armor. His lifeless eyes stared up into the blinding snow, and Karak clenched his fists in rage. "Commander, we're losing control here," Rakov said, his voice shaking as he glanced nervously at the surrounding trees. "We're not alone. Something's hunting us." Karak looked up, his sharp gaze piercing through the storm. Rakov was right. The wolves had followed them, but these weren't ordinary predators. They had been watching, waiting for the perfect moment. Now, they were close. A low growl echoed in the distance, barely discernible at first, but soon joined by others. The wolves were circling. Karak could feel the predatory intelligence behind their movements. These creatures were not just hungry. They were methodical, as if understanding the weakness of their prey. "Form a perimeter," Karak ordered. "We hold our ground." The hunters obeyed, forming a rough circle, their rifles raised, eyes darting between the swirling snowflakes. The growls grew louder, the sound of paws crunching through the snow now unmistakable. The wolves were closing in. One of the younger hunters, Vree, twitched nervously, his rifle shaking in his grip. "Why don't they attack already?" he muttered under his breath, though Karak heard it clear enough. The fear in Vree's voice only intensified the tension hanging over the group. "They're waiting," Karak replied, his voice cold. "They want us to break." And then, without warning, the attack came. A flash of fur and teeth burst from the treeline, a wolf lunging at Vree from the left. He screamed, firing wildly as the beast slammed into him, dragging him down into the snow. Karak whirled, firing a precise shot that vaporized the wolf's head, but it was too late for Vree. His blood stained the snow in dark pools. More wolves emerged from the storm, attacking from all sides. The hunters fought back, but their once advanced weapons were sluggish in the cold, and the wolves were too fast. They fought with terrifying coordination, driving the hunters apart, isolating them one by one. Karak felt the weight of desperation for the first time. These wolves weren't just animals. They were relentless, driven by something more than instinct. He could feel the presence of their leader, somewhere in the shadows, unseen but orchestrating the attack like a general on a battlefield. 2 hunters were already down. They were losing ground. "We need to move," Rakov shouted, firing into the storm. "They'll pick us off if we stay here." Karak knew he was right. Staying meant death. But where could they go in a storm like this, with no way of navigating through the icy wilderness? The wolves had them trapped, and the only way out was forward, into the unknown, where more dangers undoubtedly waited. Karak grit his teeth and raised his rifle once more. They would move, but survival was no longer certain. The storm had eased, but the air was still thick with the bitter cold, and the howling wind seemed to carry the wolves' growls through the trees. Karak and his 2 remaining hunters, Rakov and Gris, stood huddled in the ruins of a makeshift camp. The fire they had struggled to build was dying. The heat it offered barely enough to stave off the cold seeping into their bones. The wolves had retreated for now, but their absence felt like an illusion, a brief calm before the inevitable attack. "We can't stay here," Gris whispered, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. She wiped frost from her face shield, her eyes flickering with the fear they had all begun to wear openly. "They'll come again. You know they will." Karak didn't answer. His mind was clouded with doubt, something he had never known in all his years of hunting. He had led his team into countless dangers, facing beasts more formidable than anything on Earth. But none of that experience had prepared him for this, a relentless enemy that understood not only how to hunt, but how to break them apart, one by one. His body ached from the cold, and his exosuit's power was dwindling rapidly. The very air seemed like a living force, sapping them of strength. "We fight," Karak said at last, his voice low, filled with determination. "We've been hunted. Now we turn the tables. We make our stand here." Rakov shook his head, staring out into the trees. "There's no winning this, Commander. Our weapons are nearly dead, and the storm's killed our sensors. They're smarter than we thought. They're waiting for us to make a mistake. We have no choice," Karak growled. "If we run, we die. If we fight, maybe one of us makes it out alive." Even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were hollow. The wolves wouldn't allow them to escape. They had been herded into this final stand, and the creatures outside the firelight were merely biding their time. But what choice did they have? Karak scanned the area, his hunter's eyes catching movement, fleeting shadows between the trees. "They're watching us," Gris said, gripping her plasma rifle tightly, her knuckles white. Waiting. Suddenly, there was a rustle in the underbrush, a quick flash of fur. Before they could react, a wolf lunged from the shadows, tackling Gris to the ground. She screamed, struggling beneath the weight of the creature as its fangs tore into her exosuit. Karak and Rakov fired, blue plasma bolts cutting through the dark, striking the wolf and sending it sprawling lifeless into the snow. But it was too late. Gris lay still, her body slumped beneath the weight of the dead wolf, blood already staining the ground. Rakov cursed under his breath, pulling back from the fire, his hands shaking. "They're everywhere," Rakov whispered. "They're toying with us." Karak felt a surge of anger, hot and violent, cutting through the cold. His pride as a hunter, the certainty that no prey could outmatch him, had been shattered. These wolves were more than just animals. They hunted with precision, with intelligence. And somewhere out there, the alpha waited, calculating, watching, knowing the battle was almost over. "We end this now," Karak said, his voice hard as iron. He bent down, retrieving Grissa's plasma rifle and handing it to Rakov. "Stay close. If we fall together." They moved out of the camp, stepping away from the dwindling fire. The forest closed in around them, shadows stretching long across the snow. The air was unnaturally quiet, the only sound their labored breathing and the soft crunch of their boots. Karak's muscles tensed with every step, his senses attuned to the slightest movement. The wolves could strike at any moment. Then, from the darkness, the alpha emerged. It stood taller than any wolf Karak had ever seen, its massive frame rippling with muscle beneath a coat of thick, snow-dusted fur. Its eyes glowed yellow, full of a cold, calculating malice. This was no mere predator. It was something more, something that had been bred for survival in the frozen wilds, just as Karak had been bred for the hunt. The alpha didn't rush them. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if daring them to make the first move. Behind it, the other wolves waited in silence, their glowing eyes fixed on the two remaining aliens. Karak fired first. His plasma bolt shot through the dark, but the alpha dodged, moving with terrifying speed. It lunged toward Rakov, jaws wide, teeth flashing in the dim light. Karak yelled, firing again, but it was too late. The alpha sank its teeth into Rakov's shoulder, dragging him down into the snow. Rakov screamed, trying to fight it off, but the beast was relentless. Karak charged forward, slamming into the alpha with all his strength, his fists pounding against its thick hide. The wolf released Rakov, turning its full attention to Karak. Its massive jaws snapped, barely missing his throat as they tumbled through the snow. Karak fought with everything he had, but the alpha was too strong, too fast. It pinned him down, its breath hot against his face, fangs bared in a triumphant snarl. Karak raised his plasma rifle, but the beast swatted it away effortlessly. He was out of options. With a final, desperate roar, Karak swung his blade, an ancient weapon, more ceremonial than practical, and struck the alpha's side. The beast yelped, recoiling in pain, but it wasn't enough. The wolf's eyes locked onto Karak's, and he knew the end had come. The alpha's jaws closed around his neck, and everything went dark. As dawn broke over the frozen landscape, the wolves melted back into the shadows, leaving behind only the remnants of the alien hunters, silent trophies in the snow.